you shouldn't be able to see me right now.
eBay. For sale. MX5. One owner. Never drifted. Absolutely rust free. These are all lies. Just watching anime. So, while I was doing the intercooler piping, I did notice a little spot of rust. By little, I mean I could fit my fist in it. But if you are an MX5 owner, don't be scared. Grab a welder. Doesn't need to be an expensive one. Learn to weld and go at it yourself. Don't sell it just for a little bit of rust. It's easier to fix than you think. Let's go take a look. The part that is affected is this front chassis leg here on both sides, but this one's a bit worse. I'll take you in closer for a better look. I'm not supposed to be able to do that. So as you can see, the rest is fine apart from that section, and it is like it on both sides, but this side not as bad. It is swelling up, if you can see it's bowed out here. I'm actually going to be removing the entire front subframe, including all the suspension, wishbones, everything. This is an optional step. You don't need to do this. You can get around welding these on with the subframe on, the engine in, everything. It's just a little bit more difficult. My subframe is coming off anyway. You'll see why in future episodes. First things first, I want to disconnect the steering column. The steering rack itself is going to stay on the subframe, but I need to disconnect it from the car. So before you do anything, make sure your steering wheel is straight and locked in position. You can separate the steering column from the steering rack here at the universal. You can use this bolt or this bolt, doesn't really matter. I'm going to use this one because it's accessible. Just give it a little tap to try and free it away. While you're up here, undo the two nuts for your suspension. One last thing before we dive underneath the car, and that's to take the fuel breather hose out, because it is connected to the subframe. Underneath the car, I now want to disconnect my anti-roll bar from the car. You don't necessarily have to disconnect it from the car, but at least disconnect the drop links from the car. These are notorious for snapping, so make sure you give them a good soaking with WD-40. Next thing is to disconnect the brake lines from the car. Now we've got to stop the brake fluid dripping. You can do that one of two ways. One is to depress the brake pedal with brick or a brake depressor, but I just like to make a little line stopper with a brake fitting and just smush it over a few times in the vise. We're not going to be putting any pressure on it, so it'll be fine. All we've got left is 8 bolts, but before we undo them, gonna have to make sure we've got a trolley jack underneath so it doesn't drop on us, and that will make it easy to roll this out. The 4 main bolts, 2 either side, are right up in there. Bit hard to see on camera. Just there, and they're 2 nuts, so the studs come out of the chassis. They're going to be really tight. Make sure you give them a good soak with WD-40. Well, the back one fought me most of the way. Time for the last 4. The last 4 are a bit easier to get to. 2 each side. 1 tucked away up here, and 1 really easy to get to back there. Everything should now be undone. This is where you ideally want a second person. We're going to slowly lower the jack and keep an eye on the steering column to make sure that is coming away from the steering rack. Now that's all out of the way, I thought I'd bring you in for a closer look to see how bad it really is. That's where the subframe attaches, and it's pretty bad, even on the inside. Luckily, I've managed to find a set of repair panels. Bought a left and a right, got all the holes for all these brackets, so I'm going to clear all this out, make some space, and then start taking some measurements. The anti-roll bar brackets are actually spot welded right in between the 2 bolts, so we'll have to drill that out. So that's all out the way now. I've gone around the edges with a knot wheel on a grinder, get all the paint away, all the surface rust away, so we've got something nice to mark on and to weld. Now I'm ready to take some measurements. I'm going to take them all from this anti-roll bar hole to measure that way, and that way, and then I'll take a reference bolt hole from the other sides for the other side. That's all the marking out done. When you're doing this yourself, measure, mark it out, measure again, and then just for safety, measure it again. Once you cut this, there's no going back. If you've cut too far that way, you're going to have to fill a gap. But I've measured all mine, I've checked it all, it's time to get cutting it. Well, that was quite a task. It was a bit hard to get the angle grinder in some places, so it might be easier to use other tools like reciprocating saw or something like that. But it is all done. This is the only time we're going to be able to get inside here and treat any rust, so I've just got a wire wheel on a drill, cleaned all the rust up, gave it a quick paint, and the same on the inside of the repair panel. So now it's time to tap. Make sure she's all square and then weld her up. well, she's all welded up. I didn't film a lot of it because it would have just been my face in the way, but now it's all welded up. I'm going to go along with a knot wheel, clean any oxidisation off. I'm going to put in some sacrificial bolts, and then I'm going to give it a quick lick of paint. And I'm going to end the episode there. I've still got the other side to do, that's going to take me a while, but there's still lots more I want to do to the engine bay, ready for when the engine goes back in. So catch me next time on the next episode when I'll be finishing this off. Don't forget to like and subscribe.